Hello everyone, Adam Keeley here. For those who don't know, I have cerebellar cognitive affective syndrome. I hit the back of my head hard enough when I was 6.5 years old when I fell off the trampoline that I suffer from subtle and lifelong effects that manifest in some ways similar to autism. So I've been curious if I can actually narrow down to the exact date that I hit my head. I surprisingly didn't suffer much loss of consciousness and tried to continue as normal from that accident. And all these decades later, I have the condition from the doctor's screening tool and from eye movement deficits measured by an ophthalmologist that show brainstem level damage and differences between vertical movements and horizontal movements that are processed in two different areas of the brain. So, along with high scores on autism screening tools, I for sure have the condition, and I'm lucky enough that I still have my notebook from first grade, and the teacher would write prompts on the board every day, things like 3 things that I'm looking forward to for Halloween and things like that, drawing exercises, not always writing, and one day, September 18th, 1997, she wrote big as a blank, and I sat up right away to write down T-Rex, big as a T-Rex, because a dream that in hindsight was more of a near-death experience was still on my mind, and I wrote it down right away, and it acted as a bookmark all these decades later to finally figure out this syndrome and revisit what had happened. So at first I was aiming for the general summer of that year. I must have hit my head outside playing on the trampoline in warm weather, green grass, pleasant conditions. I remember all that, and I didn't think there was a way to narrow it down much further than that. And I just decided to start researching the transmissions, the television shows from around that time. Dreams do subtle and strange things, and a significant pattern that emerged from analyzing this dream is a surprising connection to Ted Turner, the founder of CNN. I think my brain injury saw the extremely subtle manifestation of Lewy body dementia that he is now diagnosed with. On September 18th, 1997, he donated $1 billion to create the United Nations Foundation. So I have this pattern of the T part of the T-Rex, the connection to Ted Turner, transmissions, television, and so after finding that correlation on the 18th, I soon remembered, I remembered a phone call on the late night call-in show Coast to Coast AM in the early morning of September 11th, 1997. Someone called in, and it's a very strange context, but this person claims to be a former employee of Area 51, the secret government base in Nevada, and he said had recently been let go on a medical discharge, and he was using the open lines that night to call in and tell about Area 51. So he sounded like people were after him, like he was on the run, and he sounded very desperate to warn the listeners of the show that what we call globalists want to depopulate highly populated areas, and they want to simply control people and use fear. And his call abruptly got cut off right at his most desperate sounding moment. So this satellite disruption appears to be very real. The host of the show put up further details about how it was real, and they had technical people from the network on the line to try to figure out what was going on shortly, and they had to switch to a backup system. So there is definitely energy and a strange happening going on around September 11th, 1997, 4 years before the terror attacks on September 11th, 2001, when I was in middle school. So I continued to investigate this satellite disruption and soon found a segment of television advertisements from September 10th, only a few hours beforehand. It had a similar audio disruption, about 10 to 20 seconds, where during an ad for a fictional character, the audio was disrupted right when this fictional character was having an apparent psychotic break from reality and was very, very desperate to be understood. So I like to think this energy surrounding this date of September 10th into the 11th of 1997 represents the disruption to my brain, somehow making its way out into the social fabric and adjusting accordingly. I like to think that the terror attacks on September 11th could have been a lot worse. The respected psychologist Marie-Louise von Franz says that dreams are the most beneficent psychological force, one of the most beneficent, and yet they also have a double-edged nature. So I couldn't do much as a brain-damaged 6.5-year-old, and my type of brain injury wasn't even described until a year later by the good Dr. Jeremy Schmaumann. So there was no scientific basis for processing what had happened to me. And I directly remember watching that segment of advertisements on TV. So I know it isn't some glitch or muted segment that was added later. So it's all I can say is it's a very strange energy surrounding that day, and people noticed. People seem to have noticed what had happened to me, even if my mother reacted negatively, to say the least, and my family didn't accept and process a difference in me. So this connection with Ted Turner and Lewy body dementia appears to be very critical and very supportive of the claim, the subjective claim, that I had a strange dream that night where everyone slowly turned into dinosaurs, adults first, and I eventually turned into a T-Rex. I must have dreamed it after going to bed late that night. I like to think it was perhaps a professional day, and I had a short day from school that day and was playing on the trampoline, and the accident happened. And it is very much a problem that I appear to have gone to bed so late that day when I had school the next day. But that's the least of the problems of having an undiagnosed and, I like to think, unacknowledged brain injury. My research has come across the fact that Lewy body dementia is characterized by sleep disturbances, dreams, and nightmares that are heavily influenced by what the person has seen on TV earlier that day. So, in line with this connection and the dream pointing to Ted Turner, I discovered that the beloved TV game show Jeopardy that day had a clue of the general science for $200 was the Rex in this dinosaur's name means king, so you might say that this dinosaur was the king of the dinosaurs. So a transgender contestant got that clue correct, and if I recall correctly, my mother had a negative reaction to this contestant, even though she seemed like a likable person and seemed fine to me. So that's another T connection and transformation, later becoming the transformation theme of the dream. So I consider myself to be neurogender because of how deeply this condition affects me, and neurogender is part, or can be part, depending on the individual, can be part of the trans modality. And as a neurogender who fits under the trans modality, I would find it offensive to presume that I want to take artificial hormones or use surgery to change myself in unnecessary or unproductive ways, and yet I'm glad that that appears to be the healthiest way forward for other people. It very much appears to be a stereotype that a trans person needs to or wants to change things. It at the same time, I would prefer to have not been brain injured, yet that is what I'm dealing with now, and nothing can change that apart from advanced stem cell research, perhaps, that hasn't been done yet. And so this energy around that date and the apparent subconscious warning and prediction of some terrible action that happened 4 years later does appear to be real in a very curious way, and I'm not quite sure what to make of it all. It's just, for me, makes it all the more certain that the self-diagnosis based mainly on the eye movement deficit evidence is all the more valid. And that's, I think, about all I wanted to communicate. The amazing cherry on top of all of this strange dinosaur dream is that I actually visited Israel when I was a fetus, and if you translate T-Rex into dang, what's it called? My condition is blocking the word. If you translate T-Rex into Hebrew, then the word starts with the spinning wheel, and the right hand, let's see, it'd be that way. So I like to think the spinning wheel is the trampoline combined with my rotation as I fell backwards with my right foot was caught in the rim of the trampoline. I remember it clearly because of my body positioning and facing away from the house. I was facing due west and fell over backwards to face due east upside down. And the next glyph in Hebrew is the that would be this way, a kind of L, upside down L that represents somebody's head. And so I fell over backwards, my head rotated, and the very next glyph is the represents the nape of the neck, the back of somebody's head, and it also represents the needle and thread, and also a monkey's tail. So my foot catching the edge is sort of like my quote-unquote tail grabbing onto a branch, try to break my fall. Needle and thread of somehow surviving the accident and being functional enough. And the back of the head, the story is all there. And along with the last glyph of T-Rex written in Hebrew represents the main support pole of a tent. So that's the direct connection to the support pole of the trampoline that I hit the back of my head with. It's really quite jaw-dropping when I started checking each of these glyphs, that the story is all there. And it's really quite jaw-dropping. And furthermore, the spinning wheel glyph is also the same glyph that television written in Hebrew uses. That's about it. I am in a no-contact situation with my family of origin. They are not part of my life anymore because of how abusive they were before and after the accident. I hope this clarifies and confirms the strange energy surrounding that date and the apparent warning and prediction. So that's all I've got for now. Take care.